Please welcome to part 2 of our review of this year on Parshat Mishpatim, Tafshin Ayin Vav. So we do a brief review of the review. As usual, we come out of Tfilat Arvit. All right, so the main points that we've gone through is basically the question of why the entire ambience of the Torah seems to have changed. And yet, as the Meshech Chochmah shows us, the real beginning of a completely new Torah, if anywhere, is B'Chodesh HaShlishi. And this is part of an overall interwoven nature of the two elements, one in Yisro and one in Mishpatim, in which we find that we very difficult to figure out the chronology, tremendous machlokas in about chronology, and impossible to tease apart the various elements of Brit, such that even until we get to Yisro, we don't even understand that the nature of the Knesset Labris itself is dependent on Nasa and Ishman, and not just on the Nasa, but on a completely different vision of what that Nasa would mean. So obviously, you could say Nasa, meaning I'll do whatever I'm told, or I could say Nasa in that I'm in, as we'll see. But the Nasa and Ishma was the essential bris with Avram Avinu, which was Hitalech L'fanai V'yetamim, and therefore the Imlo Brisi is a reference both to that bris milah V'Salech L'fanai, and to this bris itself. So however we paskin in terms of the machlokas with Rashi and the Ramban and the Ibn Ezra, or the different shittas in the Mechilta, or the Gemara and Yuma between Rabbi Yossi Aglili, between Rabbi Akiva, and all of the others that get involved in this, somehow or other, what we came to understand is that in the same way the Mokum HaOren is Eno Min Hamida in terms of space, so too is the getter of bris not within time as we know it, and we have a concept of a hyperspace in the Beis Hamikdash and a hyper time in terms of bris, which of course all of the elements of the Beis Hamikdash are here linked to this very same questions of a story that clearly leads us to the Egel. The parsha ends essentially with the end of the 40 days, which brings us back to the Lech Raid, and which tells us that all along something funny is going on. There's always been a connection of Gvulais to Mitachti Sahar, to Kofalem Harchigigis, to the creation of the Egel, and to all of both the valuable and the dangerous issues that come out, come out of Har Sinai and are part of the way in which we experience Brit, which means that these two very different components are seen as being essentially different faces of the Besorim, so to speak, of the Brit, the Beinam Bitarim, and that between these two aspects of Yisro and Mishpatim, that is where the space is created for the nature of Brit. So we went through a number of simple levels in understanding why that would be true. So on the simplest level, we have really two Bitarim, so that we had Yitzro representing the Eish on Har Sinai and the terror of the Eish on Har Sinai and the listening to the Dvar Hashem and being present and Panim B'Fanim and the Dibarti B'Chem and Hatam Re'isem and all of those issues that are there in Yisro. And then in Mishpatim, we find the exact opposite. We find the element that has to do with us, in which Elohim no longer refers to the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but Elohim refers to Dayanim. And where we talk about even the Elohim Lo Tekalel and all of these things that have their understanding later on in terms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, here everything becomes the way in which we handle it, the way in which we come to understand it. So, okay, that's literally two Besarim. And then on a deeper level, we understood that it isn't enough. It was beyond the getter of Reus that we spoke about last week, and the concept of Ru'uel and the Yonadav ben Rechav. And we found that even extends over here with the extension of the Haftorah, which the Teimanim actually read, into Yonadav ben Rechav Mamish. So beyond the Reus and the Chesed, New Rayach that we found in the beginning, which of course in the end becomes the Nasav and Ishma, the ability to jump in, and the Megillah, Labanai, Razeh, the way the Gemara relates it back to the wow, this is exactly what the Tzedukim are always saying, is that I'm a Paziza, and how could you jump in like that, and so on. That really occurs in terms of the psychology of it in the Reus and Yisro, but it needs much more than friendship. What we need is an ability to have an awareness of some shared reality for there to be bris. It can't just be a getter of listening, a path that is going to take us all the way backwards to the most primal elements in Ma'aser Bereishis, a common reality that leads forward to common goals, and an ongoing communication that continues to take place through Torah Shebaal Peh, whether there's a Navi there or not, because Chacham is Adaf Minavi. And that's the definition of bris. I mean, it's impossible to have a one-sided bris where you're going to have the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we all, sort of following orders. That's not bris. That's simple avdus. I mean, that's a Muslim vision of reality. That's what Islam is about. Literally. It's the exact opposite of the getter of bris. And the result of it is horrific, in which there is no moral sense that survives, and there's nothing in which a person has to make any kind of real determinations. And anything that you do, as long as you believe you're the servant of Allah, you can do whatever it is that you want. And I mean, the world looks at it aghast, like how is it possible for human beings to be so reduced from their supposed integration with God? And you see the essence of the antithesis of bris, which of course is expressed in their approach to bris milah as well, as an act of mesiras nefesh and a test of manhood and whatever other elements are involved, has nothing to do with the sense of the commonality of a reality in which we experience the most sensitive of our intimate relationships in terms of the connectedness that we have to Ma'aser Bereishis, and that becomes itself the Talech Lefanai. It's amazing. The connection to that, of course, is brought out very strongly over here at the end of Yisro, with the words of Lotia Meshakila and all of these inyanim that are reproductively oriented. Your trees will grow, your children will grow, there won't be any miscarriages. Well, this is part of your commitment, your continued involvement, exactly as Bris Milah went before. So that means that there is a need to be able to share the thoughts of God, as scientists say, right? And because of that, we came to recognize also that the equivalent of the nature of bris in terms of the way in which the universe speaks to us and the way in which it's reflected in reality is not simply in the relationship of chok and mishpat that occur over here in the simple sense that mishpatim are translations in an evolutionary sense of things that are expressed essentially in chok, but that have become so much part of the way we sense things that we don't believe that they're chokim, because we sense them. Of course, the moment that we begin to try to justify them and explain them, we completely break down. And therefore, there has never really been a sustainable philosophical approach to ethics and morals that makes any difference to anybody, because it's all very nice that it makes sense in the sensual sense, but it certainly does not maintain itself in any kind of absolute or committed logical sense. And it's because of that, that's atheism 101. One of the things we've got to learn from religion is, there's got to be some reference point outside, because otherwise we're not going to be able to have a sustainable world, whether we believe in God or not. Let's pretend we believe in God, whatever absurdities. But it's clear that we really, really need that type of relationship. And therefore we came more deeply to understand that the way in which we experience the development of humanity, we experience the development of our minds in such a way that we are shocked to discover that we can think about the thoughts of God. And it's a beautiful story. I had this brilliant, she was, at the time that I met her, she was like 95 already. She was in an old age home. I used to go with my wife. We used to go every week to visit these elderly people. There was an old age home up in Motza, that beautiful home. And a couple of people there. One of them lived in the Rovo once when she moved. Remember that professor? A lovely, lovely lady. And she moved out there, and then we got to know other people. So it was this woman, and she was a German woman who had been here, whatever, 60 years and so on. She had reverted to speaking German, so she was here to speak to me in German all the time. So I was able to make it out because of my knowledge of Yiddish. But she's an amazing woman, very, very alive and excited about life. And she tells me one day, one of the last times I saw her, if not the last time, I have a present for you, she says. I have a present for you. And if you take this, you're going to be thinking the thoughts of God. Wow. She gives me this present. What does she have? She has an off-print of the original, Einstein's original article of relativity. She gives me this offering. She said, "This, you got to read this." As if like this is news to me. She's still living 60 years in the past. That's amazing news. It was beautiful to see, and the excitement with which she communicated this. It's an amazing thing, and it literally kept her young. She never got old because it's the excitement of being part of things. About all of a sudden the beautiful girl that the Zohar speaks about, that motions to you in the window and shows herself to you, where a person can get the sense that there's something in this for me. This is what nature essentially does to us. This is how where the schoolboy has been going all his life, to his first his arithmetic and then his math, and he's been screaming to his parents about how we're going to waste this, and I don't intend to be an accountant, and I'm not going to use this. What do I need it for? I'm not giving him these silly reasons. He can't go through life without knowing. And then all of a sudden, like one day, there he is in school, and he has a decent teacher. He's in his physics stores. All of a sudden, he sees, my God, what are they, crazy? Don't they understand what this is? This is the thoughts of God. What else is there for me? And all of a sudden, his whole life has changed, right? Because that one instant of realizing that this is like not about the logistics. This is about the only thing that's real that he's ever seen. Everything else is just silliness. So all of a sudden, the world starts to fit together and make sense and entices him, seduces him, pulls him in. Now there's nothing that he wants more than to understand more of that. And it's amazing the type of people that the Mesiras Nefesh. We're talking about hundreds of millions of human days and lives that have been put into understanding each little thing that we have today. The Mesiras Nefesh that went into it, and Chidushim that went into it. An unbelievable enterprise. Of so many people who dedicated their entire life entirely Lishma, basically. Until recent times, it was entirely Lishma. That type of relationship in which the Torah is given to us with the Torah Shebaal Peh, in which we're told that this has to be the thing that you understand, that you have to sense, that it holds together, that it makes sense. That change from the human world in which we were cavemen, so to speak, living within just reflections of a supposed reality that existed outside. That's the equivalent of only having Parshas Yisro. There's a reality outside. But that outside is by definition Kaf Aleim Harchigikis. What does this have to do with me? This is the way things are. You have a choice. This is the reality. Bend your neck and take it. The difference between that and the years of the dark ages and the inability for human beings to actually penetrate on any real level what was going on, to be machadish in any way, to see things that would never have been seen, could never have been dreamed of before, to change into people who, because of that understanding, are capable of recognizing in every tiny thing. You'll walk into a garden, and once the poet saw the garden with all of the lovely romantic notions of the garden, you know the difference of walking into a garden where the sense of every photon of light and what it's doing in the development of photosynthesis and recognizing how that's working at an efficiency that's only enhanced by quantum mechanics, it couldn't work the other way, and the understanding of all of the interactions that you literally begin to feel the differences in the chemicals around you, and the way in which your nose interacts with it, and your feelings interact, your breath interacts with it, the sense of being one with it is just absolutely something that was impossible to have until the development of that sensuality, which is Mishpatim. Sense in the deepest, intimate ability to be able to think those thoughts, to be part of those thoughts, to be able to be nichnas lebrit without its meaning anything to you on that level, is just religion. It has nothing to do with bris. It's just, I believe in this set of beliefs and have no choice but to do it. It's like you remain a Muslim, essentially. That's all that you have. You're a Muslim. Okay? Well, where's there bris in that? There cannot be bris in that. And therefore, the yet deeper sense is that Maisa Bereshis consists of this interrelationship. What are HaKadosh Baruch Hu's thoughts? What do they have to do with the Hashem B'chochma Yesad Haaretz? What does your going to the bathroom have to do with Asher Yatzaras Adam B'chochma? That this is Lifnei Kisei Chvodecha. This is an unbelievable thing, which of course leads in the end to Par, the understanding of the dangers of recognizing the Darga of Chochma and the presence of the Shekhinah within yourself. But the amazing fact that unless there would be this interrelationship between the pure Chochma of creation, which is a Chochma Me'ayin Timatze, which comes from absolutely nothing, right? Ayin, which is everything to us, the ability to concretize that in a universe that ends up evolving life and intelligence and consciousness out of the few simple yesodes that ultimately become one yesod as we go backwards and deeper to the moment of creation itself, in which Bereshis bara Elokim is one thing, as Rashi says. And it's mind-boggling. This is the reality of what we touch, of the pieces of wood that we're sitting on, of the air that we breathe. This is the relationship of Mishpatim, the concretization, the actualization, the instantiation that comes directly from the pure Chachma that is given to the Bria, in which Hashem b'chochma Yesad Haaretz, in which we literally eat and breathe that Chachma, in which our entire relationship of understanding the presence of that. This is the Hineni Sholech Lifnechem Malach. This is the point. Now that you have Mishpatim, you will find me everywhere. That's the point. That's exactly what the Ramban is pointing out. Until you had this, so what do you have? You have a relationship to something which is outside of the world, no connection to anything. Miolam lo yarda shechina lamata. I'm going to send you a world that is Shmi B'Kirbo, in which every last thing is a direct, it's the Kolo, it's Kekol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is an unbelievable Besura. And this Besura is the Besura of science, which of course, according to the Rambam, is literally the same. It's not a parallel, but it's the same mitzvah of Talmud Torah, exactly in understanding Ma'aser Bereshis. And the way it is that we are what we are, this is what the Torah ultimately is. That's the first level of understanding. It's this getter of bris that allows the universe to exist as it is. And it's this getter of bris that allows us to be able to be nichnasim, the bris. Without it, the way in which we experience reality was always as outsiders. And the more deeply we experience this reality, the more we think of ourselves, the more we value ourselves, the more unwilling we are to be avadim, the more we need freedom, the more it's a given that we have to be free. These are unbelievable changes. The expectations that we have of reality that never were there until mamish the most recent times. Expectations? What expectations? To be able to have your own life, to be able to make your own choices, to be able to survive beyond your 20s. Expectations? This is an unbelievable thing. And I pointed out in terms of reality, if you take a look at the difference, the more sophisticated the civilization is, the less possible it is for catastrophes to affect them, literally. You will only find these mass catastrophes in places where people have not yet learned to value themselves. So when they're wiped out, you have a tsunami wipe out 1 million people, let's see. You never hear about tsunamis in New York wiping out 1 million people. If 50 people are killed by something, it's what? 50 people? How's that possible? It's an unbelievable different visa. Totally different visa. You make an analysis, 97%, I think it was, of catastrophes, which was a loss of life higher than like 1,000, take place in third world countries. What does that mean? Why should that be? There's a completely different sense of relationship of what a human being is and where he belongs in the world that comes from this. These are not small changes, massive changes in what it means to be human. And all of this is the getter of bris. So what used to be the absurd, and it still goes on because at the university level, goes on all the time, the battle between the applied mathematics faculty and the pure mathematics faculty, which chas v'shalom should even be the same binyan, because I mean, the chilul Hashem of people using what they're going to be using mathematics for silliness, for applied. I mean, lamaisa, that breakdown is a breakdown in the chefza of bris, because such a person will never gain that profound awareness and excitement and love of everything that has become exactly ingrained and instantiated. There's a beautiful quote from Oliver Sacks, in which he says like this: it's precisely the richness of the concrete that gives power to the abstract. So in abstracting or generalizing or theorizing, as thus understood, the concrete is never lost. Quite the reverse. As it's seen from a broader and broader viewpoint, it's seen to have ever richer and unexpected connections, so that it holds together. It makes sense as never before. As one gains in generalities, so one gains in concreteness. The concrete leads to the general, and it's to the general that one recaptures the concrete, intensified, transfigured, which is exactly what we're talking about. This is the experience not only of science, but of the chefts of Torah. This is like, the loimek shalom anas lasos. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's mutavoshi is haptikoshu yosel ponav. There's no shaykhs to Torah at all. What do you mean? I know everything. You know nothing. But the current bizui of the ability to translate the Torah into a Rav, to translate the Rav, Rav. No, what's a Rav? The unbelievable chokhmah that in anything at all, if you wanted to know whether it was about business, it was about science, it was about human relationships, the only one to talk to is a Rav. Not to, well, you could talk to Rosh Yeshiva, he knows nothing. This is like part of the modern transition in which all of the Gedolei Olam were, in terms of their interrelationship, that's Shivim Shel Sanhedrin, that's the constant involvement. As the Gemara says, that was Rabbeinu HaKodesh, because of the fact everybody came to him, all of the issues had to be resolved by him. And instead, but he learns Torah Lishma. What does Lishma mean? To have nothing to do with anything. That's what it ends up meaning. So Lamaisa, he ends up having no das whatsoever. That is the myth of a das Torah, of somebody who doesn't have the das to be able to apply the realities on every concrete aspect of life. And he cannot give you a good idea for your business, except with his Ruach HaKodesh and so on. And he can't tell you a word about how the world evolved or what the reality is, what happens when he turns on a light. It has no shaykhs to any of this, right? And therefore, when we're talking about this moment, it's a new world. It's not simply a new book. It's a new world. And the Zohar puts this together. It's very interesting that here is the place where you have to learn that what once would have appeared and the way people believed such a world would look like was magic. It's just magic. The kind of the world in which we live, perceived from the perspective of 1,000 years ago, is nothing but magic. We talk to anyone that we want anywhere on the planet at the touch of a button. We fly from place to place. We perceive things from far away. An ayin raya and an eizun shemas. Maybe we could imagine such things barely. Everything that is happening is pure magic, and yet the point is that we need to learn that it isn't magic. It's the magic that's dangerous, and that's why years gufa the machashefa lo techayeh. That's the point. Magic is the breakdown in all relationships, which is why it becomes machashefa lo techayeh kol shochevim meima mos yumas, which is the reality of Bilam. There's a machashefa shochevim meima, because the two go hand in hand. I cannot maintain that relationship of the salech lefanai, of the involvement of the development of things, if I think magically. It has to be that I think the words of the reality around me, of the universe around me, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavayachal. So that even people who don't believe in God believe they're thinking the thoughts of God. That's a given way of describing what it is that you're doing. And I don't believe in God. It doesn't matter. I'm thinking the thoughts of God. If Einstein is chilek on quantum mechanic interpretation of statistical interpretations, it's because they're altered. It's their altar that doesn't do that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Atik Yomin, is their altar. That was the way he put it, that God does not play dice. It's their altar doesn't play dice with the universe. And that's his vision of what is God? That's what it is. The Atik Yomin. So this is the simplest relationship of Choku Mishpat, that it was essential for Moshe Rabbeinu to get through the heads of the Balachei Hashares themselves, and all of the Malachim who were taining the Tzloit Kala Shamayim. You have absolutely nothing. It's not that you have something. You have nothing. There is no Hoit Kala Shamayim, because the only possibility of the Chukah Shamayim V'aretz is where they become Chukah Shamayim V'aretz. If they're not Chukah Shamayim V'aretz, they're not in the Shamayim at all. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, which is where they, of course, are all mita'avim and lakachta matanos ba'adam. Specifically, it's because of the ba'adam. And therefore, the entire universe changes because of the way that you relate to it. And this is the next point. Because being able to think these thoughts is not simply your experience, it's absolutely your participation. And that's the beautiful, beautiful way that the Zohar puts it, which is, we've seen part of the Zohar before. We were talking about the nature of Chiddush, so the way that a Chiddush, somebody says a Chiddush. Remember that a Chiddush means a Chiddush. A Chiddush doesn't mean, this is a psak in the Shulchan Aruch as well. You're talking about a Hira that is Mechudeshet. It means that it's a complete reconceptualization. If it's just, follows from what it is that already exists, that's not even usher in terms of my Rabba V'nei Rabba. Okay, fine. That's like the Shulchan Aruch, But over here, like the Zohar puts it, Bahi Shaita the Mila D'Oraita is Chatchem Ibumid Barnash. So a human being has a Chiddush. Ahi Mila Salka V'Sadat Kamei Kuchabricha. V'Kuchabricha not alay Mila V'Noshik lay. Lo Otar lay. B'Shivin Atrin. And then the Mila Chochmatza goes in it Salka V'Yasva Aresha Tzadik Chayolami V'Tosim B'Tamam V'Shata B'Shivim Elaval. So that is something that is there. First of all, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes love to it, kisses it, hugs it, shows that means more to me than anything else. And from there it goes, and that Chiddush is shared with 70,000 different universes. When you said any Chiddush, what is the meaning of a Chiddush? What do you mean, what is the meaning? That's the point of a universe that is growing, that is evolving, that is learning about itself. What do you mean, what is the point? What else is the point? So any element that has been mischadesh anywhere in the universe becomes nogea to all possible interpretations of life. Would I have to share it with 70,000 different universes? What's the difference? That's the point. And because of that, it becomes now, it's misatrin l'gabei eretz, and it creates a new world. V'itz chadesh, kula eretz chadasha. Mi'ayi milad is chadesh be'raisa. It has to be so new and so fresh that it restructures reality. And there has to be a world that's created out of that reality, which everything is different, which you find in the Gemara. Alavai, my leg should be made out of steel so I can walk after you all the time. Because this is the way you think about things. It's unbelievable. I need to experience that all the time. If only I could just somehow be with you always. That this becomes now, there's beautiful things in the Zohar. Kama ribu, the Malachei Elohim come, and that word now is mischaber to every other Chiddush that has ever been said. They all come together, they join together, and this is Ahud Echsivlin Torah Shamayim V'Yisod Oretz. V'Leimor L'Tzion Amiyata. Amiyata doesn't mean the air. They all come together. Tirinu Milin, the Mitziyonim, Milin Alelim. Amiyata, I'll take Amiyata, Imiyata. You become my shutef, Levi shutef to me. Ma'ana b'milula dili avidat Shamayim V'Oretz. I'm able with my Chiddushim to create universes. Like it says, Bidvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu Afachiyat, you're exactly the same. Your words are creating entirely new worlds. And therefore, Zakoininu de Mishtadle Bioraisa. Amazing schus to be able to have that ishtadlus in the Torah. That is the deeper madrega of the something, because every new interrelationship that is discovered, this was Eddington's chashash. Did we create the electron or did we discover the electron? The entire involvement, as we pointed out, the entire involvement of the human mind, of the observer with the observer, the relationship of the strange setting up of the way we view the universe in terms of quantum mechanics. I mean, it's very difficult to draw the line that was always drawn in classical physics between an outside, which is exactly the Yisro. The universe is outside, you know. As far as Newton's vision of what time is, it exists on its own. There's a flow that is, you know, it's all around you, and it's just whatever it is, but it's not that you have some impact on the way that there's no impact. There is a universe. That's the old, you know, there's only one universe, and Newton is his prophet. That's the idea. Over here, the whole tfisa, the modern tfisa of the nature of reality doesn't see it that way at all. It's as much as impossible to conceive of a realistic description of things that could have a universe outside. It doesn't even make sense. What would it mean? Obviously, the observer is going to be part of what's being observed. How is it possible to say there's that outside? This is the exact opposite of Kafalei Marachagigis. There can't be a universe that you're not part of. That's the point. In which case, the actual result of even of those who don't understand it, to bring Isaac in what is Nogea Torah itself, is that the entire universe changes because of your relationship to it. This has to do very much with how it is that we experience the dinim of Mishpatim in terms of Nezikin, because we find that there are two very, very different ways in which we can see the getter of the structure of Mishnah and Memel of Mishnah. We know it's Nogei also the way in which the person has to answer Leosid Lavo. According to the Gemara in Shabbos, we know that Mevasis, Rebbe was Mevasis, the structure of the Mishnah in which case we have Yeshua speaking Nezikin. So it occurs exactly where it is in the Seder of the Mishnah that we have. And as Rashi says, what is the get of Yeshua? Why in the world would we call Nezikin Yeshua? It's just the craziest thing until you understand the unbelievable power of it. So the craziest thing is, why it's called Yeshua, is because if you want to save yourself from losing money and knossos and causing damages, you better be a Baki and Nezik. You know, they're going to crazy way of putting it. I'm going to call the getter of Nezikin Yeshua because of the fact that it's the way to get along without losing money. Save yourself from losses. But the truth is, of course, that in terms of the Mishpatim aspect in which I have come to be sensitized to the getter of Mishpat, that is exactly the way that I became sensitized in each organism looking out for itself. Right? This is Adam Smith's invisible hand. This is the way that society develops. Is only because out of the sum total of each organism searching for itself, there emerges the need that all end up having in common. And all of these things develop without anybody wanting them to develop, but just because that's the way it ends up developing. That's the way economics works. That's the way the stock market works, the way everything works. So in reality, Yeshua is the deepest understanding of the getter of Mishpat, which is central. On the other hand, there is a completely different alternative, and that is in the Medrash we find that we have Rabbi Tanchuma says Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. What's a Shisha Sidrei Mishnah? Teres Hashem Temima, Seder Noshim, Edes Hashem Ne'amana, Seder Zraim. We keep going and explaining why that's true. We know, of course, Emunah ties into Seder Zraim there as well. Yeres Hashem Tahira. Okay, this is Seder Tyrus. And we get finally at the very top, Mishpatei Hashem Emes Sotku Yachta. It's a Seder Nezikin. In this version, and we know, of course, we have two different Gidrei Nezikin, because we know that in the Gemara we have Man, the Goylam Have Chasida, should be Isaac B'mili the Nezikin. But the other man, the Omer says, man the Bailam Adar Chassid should be Isaac B'mili the Avos. Mili the Avos is a representation of Emes on a completely different target than Midas Chasidus of Nezikin, right? It doesn't say to be Isaac in Chasodim, it says be Isaac in Mili the Chasid, the Nezikin. So in other words, basically, the two sides of the vision, if you're talking about the conceptualization of it, this is Emes. And this is Mishpatim Hashem Emes, the height of all development of Torah. On the other hand, if you're talking about the sensitization of the sensation of what it is to actually feel the flow of chasadim that are required in order to provide place for a bilos of another, and what it is, how those relationships evolve, that's entirely in terms of Yeshuas. That's entirely in terms of Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basa. And those are the two faces that we have here. The Zikin from the point of view of Yisrael, so to speak, and the Zikin from the point of view of Mishpatim. So everything comes here to these two elements of bris, which are expressed, therefore, in two very different stresses in the two parshas. When we talk about Yisrael, we talk about Re'iyah, the ability to see. Because over there we have, even in the actual sounds, we talk about Re'iyah. It's called Amro Ines. Atem Re'isem, Kimina Shamayim, Dibarti Machem, which later on becomes the mitzvah of Yom Asher Amadet Alifnei Hashem Elokecha B'chorev. What is that? Which turns into the halacha that again, the only way to understand that is that it's hadvarim asher ro'u einecha, and therefore any change in the vision of what that picture is, even if it's one particular detail, as Rashi brings out, is a violation of hadvarim asher ro'u einecha, because that the whole thing collapses. And sheitim atem nachshavim, even in the eyes of the Umes Ha'olam, what do they know? But the fact is, it's not the same Torah, it's a different Torah. It doesn't matter whether it has to do with something that you understand where it is that it ties in, because the reality, that's the whole point, is that you're entering into that reality of Re'iyah. The idea of Mishpatim is exactly the opposite. Mishpatim opens with the idea of Ritzias Ozen. Why? Because of Ozen Sheshama Har Sinai, which is amazing, because the Haftorah introduces this as the essence of the bris. Because the essence of the bris is the ability to be a shomeya, essentially, to be able to go along with that shmiya. And therefore, the Ozen Sheshama Ki Li B'nei Yisrael Avadim is only this avdus to reality. And any avdus that anybody can tell you something from the outside is a violation of the nature of avdus. So to us, it sounds ridiculous. To somebody, lo yitzei chafshi. All right. Well, the obvious thing to do is take his ear and they go back, put a thing. What? The obvious thing, what is crazy? What does one have to do with the other? The whole parsha is full of things that appear to be, what? Like one person doesn't lead to the next person, nothing to do with it. Like, until we finally get to the crowning glory of complete non sequiturs. What are you talking about? What does that have to do with everything is like this. So if you're a friend, you have friends where you've got your inside jokes and you understand each other so well that if you can talk about Divrei Torah in such a way, you'll say something, the other one immediately, so that would be the get this, that. Anybody else listening, anybody comes to this year, don't know what's going on. What's right. But I just don't understand what's the connection between that and that. And the same thing, you're reading the Torah. What's the connection between that and that? But it's obvious that this is what the connection is. Because that's the entire point of Mishpatim. The ability to understand, Shmi in terms of Svira, the recognition that this has got to be, if you want to be free, that you have to be willing to hear. You're not willing to hear, fine, so then you put all three your ear. What do you need an ear for? And to admonish the point. It's something you would figure out yourself, idiot. Moshe was B'chadish today. The Lashon for an Eved is Shameh. Shami the Rabbi Nosson. Okay, it's beautiful. They could have. It's actually that taking your orders from somebody. Because the halacha, somebody, if you're mazik the ear of an evet, you pay the entire evet. You're mazik the ear, you don't pay the entire, and then he still has value. So this is an entirely different way of perceiving reality. One of which is the vision of ideas and the overall mathematics, and the other is the concretization. So this is the difference of a vision, where the vision, I think, is from the outside. But my ability to see how that becomes concretized, that's amazing. And what happens is that if there's any separation between the dargas of this bris, when the bris is destroyed, you see this all the time. People make that distinction in darga. This is a beautiful, beautiful Gemara and Chagiga. That's a tremendous chiddush. So the Gemara says like this. Look. Shame it takes some time, not instantaneous. Yeah. See, why it says like this? There's one Gemara in Sanhedrin talks about the same pasuk. It's a pasuk that Zechariah speaks of. He's talking about a terrible situation. Complete breakdown of society. Okay, so the Gemara in Sanhedrin says the meaning of the Layotzei v'lavo ein shalom min hatzar. So Rav says there, after Talmidei Chachomim shekatuv behem shalom, as always, shalom Rav le'ovetos tarasev, Rav shalom banayat ha'tudom banayat, and so on and so forth. There's always Talmidei Chachomim. Even to them, ein shalom b'pnei tzar. Now keep that in mind, and listen to the Gemara Chagiga that analyzes the same person. Layotzei v'lavo ein shalom, Omar Rav, Kivan sheyotzei adam midvar halacha ledvar mikra, shuvei lo shalom. So a guy has been learning dvar halacha. Now he decides he's going to be learning chumash. Ein lo shalom. Shmuel Amar, no. It's talking about Zah Poresh mitalmud l'mishnah. He was learning Gemara. Now he starts concentrating on Mishnayos. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, afilu mishas l'shas. Right? So here Rashi says like this. The layotzei v'lavo in shalom. It means a person is yotzei. Portion of meaning is yotzei min haTorah u'bolo l'dvorim acherim. But it's not that it's bolo l'dvorim acherim. It's even yotzei adam midvar halacha l'dvar mikra shuvei lo shalom. Says Rashi, why not? She'en hora'ah midvar mikra. You can't really learn a reality of this Horah that we were talking about, this Kiddush, this new conceptualization of life. You can't learn it from Sukkim. Because, after all, you need Mishnah to be Mefarshis, Stimat Torah. You don't have the drushes. What do you know from a pasuk in the Torah? We're going to end up like a bunch of Christians reading them, and you won't know anything. Okay. Comes along Shmuel, says, Perish be Talmud l'Mishnah. What is Talmud l'Mishnah? What does that mean? So if he was Mishamish Chachomim, that are medaktikim the Talmud Mishnayos. And he's maving the Mishnayos that are so, and he finds Limtzot Tam, Tur, L'Chovah, the Yisur of Heter. That's Talmud. Now, if he's Yotzei Mehem, and instead he's Noten Isko L'Girsat HaMishnayos, Shuv En Lo Shalom B'Dvar Horah. After all, the Shalom to a Talmud Chacham, we'll talk more about this in a moment, is the ability to be these halachas, to apply these halachas, to concretize these halachas. She'en hora'ah nechona b'dvar Mishnah. You can't learn out of it. It's basic b'toch Mishmaso, of course. It's Mivali Elam. Mishnah is sometimes a Chesuri Mechasra, says Rashi, or Almani Rebbe Ploni. Ein halacha kabayis. How can you pass halacha from Mishnah? We're getting there. And Comes along Rabbi Yochanan, and he says, "Afilu mishas l'shas." Okay, so I ask you, so what's the pshat? Afilu mishas l'shas. So in other words, a person who he was already zeicha to get into the details. I'm assuming yes, into the details of the complexities. Look at the Hirah, Talmud Bavli. If now he decides he's going to learn only Yerushalmi, right? So then Rashi is exactly the opposite. Afilu mitalmud, the Talmud, says Rashi, means mitalmud Yerushalmi, the Talmud Bavli. Why is that? The halacha, we're going to pass it like the Bavli, not like the Yerushalmi. So what's wrong? Ain't shalom what b'dvar Hirah? Well, it's because shu amok. And the Gemara wasn't more amok than the Mishnah. So what are you gaining? So okay, so what do you say? So I mean, you don't want to, you don't want to kvetch. I mean, I could have said that's why I wanted to go learn Chumash. I didn't want to kvetch. So what are you telling me? So, Dafka, it's this difference that Rashi should invert it. I mean, where does it get from that? We should. That's tremendous Chiddush in Rashi. But I mean, the Pella over here, on the simplest level. Remember what we're talking about. We're talking about. Obviously, the person has first learned here Mikra, then he went to Mishnah, and now he's decided, okay, now I'm going to concentrate on Chumash. He first was learning already Gemara after he finished Mishnah. Okay, now I learned how to learn. That's what they believe in yeshivas. You learn how to learn. You must spend a few years. That's the word. You learn how to learn. Now you go back, and you say, now I'll go back and I'll do Mishnah. Talmud, the Talmud, they mean the same thing. I was being Isaac already I was Isaac a long time ago, right? Now I finish Yerushalmi. Okay, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to learn Yerushalmi. It's a Bavli, same thing, right? The point is that the loss in either direction is a loss in bris. Because remember, Yerushalmi is Keneged Yisrael. Yerushalmi, you want to bring a raya in Yerushalmi, it's Tochaz. You have to see it. You never say Toshma in Yerushalmi. It's not Toshma, it's Shmiya. In the Bavli, you want to bring a raya, you never say Tochaz. You say Toshma. Because the entire idea, of course, is that Amkus of Shmiya. You see over here that the willingness to lose yourself in the intellectualizations and the thinking out, where you already had a shaykhs to what the Gemara calls Tzurasa D'Shmaitzah. And Tzurasa D'Shmaitzah allows you to learn even without a Rebbe. And you know Tzurasa D'Shmaitzah. Tzurasa, of course, is Re'iyah. Once you were Zeichet to that Re'iyah, if your intent is to lose yourself in the Amkus of the Bavli, Shuveno Shalom. Because the Totzah of Hirah requires the interrelationship of Re'iyah and Shmiya, not Shmiya. The person who is Isaac in Hirah only through Shmiya ends up without being able to be Meir, because he doesn't see anything. It's like what they do in yeshivas. You'll take people who don't know the Masechta, and you'll learn with them 5 daf of the Masechta. And you think that they understand one word. They understand one word. They learn with them all the Tosfos, all their, they have absolutely no idea what's going on. They could quote everything back to you because they have no sense of the re'iyah, of what it is that the entire Masechta is about, which is expressed through that vision, the entirety. It's obviously. So the problem, therefore, is that what you're being Isaac in is nothing but yourself in the end. Ein shalom. There's no possibility of getting to a darga of shalom on that madriga at all. And it's because of that we have the strange situation of the Vayechazu et Elokim Vayochlu v'yishtu in Mishpatim. But Vayechazu et Elokim Vayochlu v'yishtu is a chisoron in Re'iyah. So what is it doing over here in the level? But their chait was also they were meir halacha b'fnei Rav. which is this getter of Hayra. Before we get to understanding more deeply what we mean by the idea of Hayra, let's take a look of the way in which the opening pasuk goes. Because the truth is that it's clear that it works in either direction. And I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you beautifully. So the Gemara says, beautiful Gemara also in Chagiga, in which, let's get it here, an amazing Gemara, which people just sort of run through without realizing the implications of the Gemara. Ma'aseh Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, shaya rochev al hachamor, v'haya mahalech b'derech, Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch b'chamer acharav. See, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is sitting on top, and he's walking around. And finally, he gets a shus from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to be mechadesh in Ma'aseh Merkov. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai gets off of the chamor, he covers himself with a talis, he sits down, Yoshav al Even Achad, Tachas Hazayit, and he asks him, Rebbe, mipnei ma yaradat al chamor, efshar ata doresh b'maaser merkava v'shchina imonu l'malach yashoresh b'malavenis l'ani arkev al chamor. Are you crazy? Fine. Miyad patach Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch b'maaser merkava v'dorash yarda eish ben hashamayim and tzilcha kol ha'ilona ish b'sadeh and potzchu kulam v'mushira halalu Hashem min ha'oretz tanidim v'chol tomot eitz peri v'chol harazim na'ana malach min ha'eish v'amar hein ma'aseh merkava. Fine. Unbelievable scene, right? Omad Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai gets up, v'nashkal rosho, and he kisses him, and he says, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael shenatan ben la'Avraham Avinu sheyodea lahavin v'lachkor v'lidrosh b'ma'aseh merkava. Yesh na'eh doresh ve'ein na'eh mekayem. Yesh na'eh mekayem ve'ein na'eh doresh. Ata na'eh doresh v'na'eh mekayem. Ashrecha Avraham Avinu she'Elazar ben Aruch yatzah b'chalatzech. So we're talking about over here. You say this. I understand. So if I understand the getter of Chashmal is this, and the getter of Hatzilus is this, the getter of the Elomes is this. Yesh na'eh doresh v'na'eh mekayem. What exactly am I going to be mekayem? Where's the mekayem? Where's the hoirah? I don't understand. You see clearly that in the most, what you believe to be the most ridiculously esoteric of the Re'iyah, which is, of course, that's what Chagiga is all about, is Re'iyah. It's the mitzvah of Re'iyah. It's Keneged, the whole concept of Re'iyah. And of course, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai continues on to say, Ashreichem, Ashrei Yoladetechem, Ashrei Einai Ro'u, Shekach Ro'u, Va'afani va'atem b'chalomim misu b'nayinu al Har Sinai. And there we were, a Basko comes out and says, Alulakan. Atem v'talmidechem v'talmidei talmidechem muzmanim l'kat shlushit. So we're getting back to Har Sinai. So this is the horah that comes from Re'iyah, and only Re'iyah. It's Shaykh horah, because he only came to this Re'iyah after he'd already been through his ability. It's like Picasso, You say, well, I can also draw a side like that. Yeah, once you know how to draw, you can draw like that. Let me see. It's exactly the good. You're telling me I could do that. It doesn't look like anything. It's because you don't understand anything. But the point is that once you are already over to the darga of Re'iyah, which is Kedeged the Totochazi, and you're unable, unable to be Noah Mekayim, such that it changes every last thing that you do because of the world that you live in, because it's so totally changed, so that every relationship that you have and every word that comes out of your mouth is mushpa, directly, how you speak, the tone you speak, the words you use, your entire approach to what it means to be human, to change completely because you have this insight into Ma'aseh Merkava. That's the deepest Torah. So what are you telling me? That I have to go into Yerushalmi, into Bavli in order to have the Torah? I've already learned Bavli. So now the desire to go back is exactly where this starts from. The reason I say this is because the reality is that the beginning of the parsha, in the first pasuk of the parsha, says everything that there is to say about the nature of the parsha. So that we have three tremendous diukim that Rashi brings us right at the beginning. And now I'll read you the Rashi. Oh, I got too many of those. There we go. No, it's not the right one. Maybe I didn't put it in this PDF. Let's see. Nothing works. I try, nothing works. All right, give me a chumash. Man, there are chumashim, right? So here's our. That's really strange because I always thought that I put it. It's the wrong one. This is Aleph. I need base. Oh yeah, read better. Even better. Okay, so every school child knows this Rashi. It's all, all very sweet and so on. So, V'ela Mishpatim, Kol Makom Shnamar Eila, Pasal HaRishonim, V'ela Meisif Al HaRishonim. We all know about this Vav, this amazing Vav. So, Ma Rishonim Sinai, Af Elu Nisim. Lamaisa. I mean, this gives us a much more profound interrelationship, as we will see, with the Etzem Nekodav Zez Brisi, Yimla Brisi Yamam Valayla, which takes us back to the, as we've said, to the first missing Vav, because obviously the interrelationship between the Bereshis, Bar Lakim, and the Eilat Oleh Shamayim V'Aretz B'Hi Baram, the reason that we don't have that chibur of a Vav, which is Pasal HaRishonim, is only because we don't have Ve'ela Mishpatim. Because once you have Ve'ela Mishpatim, you can be mischaber to the Rishonim and the Shivim Elef Elomes and so on and so forth, which we know nothing about, without Ve'ela Mishpatim. Because that's what the Medrash says. What was it, Pasal? It was Pasal, all of those universes that are included in the original Bereshis Bara Elokim. So since Malamed HaKadosh Baruch Hu Borei Olamot Umachrivam Yizaviyas, so it passes it, but that psul doesn't have to remain a psul once you have the gisha to Chidush Torah. So the Vav actually restores that missing interrelationship of Imlo Brisi. The bris is destructive originally because there's no toldes. There's no chibur of the toldes to the original Bereshis. That's the first one. But the deeper question is, why does it say at all Ve'ela HaMishpatim? Because the meaning of Ve'ela HaMishpatim, I mean, if this would occur in a Gemara, this would be in a Mishnah, what would the Gemara say right away? It would say, Mishpatim Mandach HaShemayim, understand. Tana Hechak HaKoyed is Ketani Mishpatim. Well, I understand. We're in the middle of a story of Yisroel and Lo Tivneatem Gaziz, Ve'ela HaMishpatim. What? I said, well, we're waiting. Did I ask you about Mishpatim? Oh, and here's the Mishpatim. Which Mishpatim? It's interesting Mishpatim. So in other words, the whole meaning of that is that it's a given that a bris that is incapable of translating itself is not there at all. So you're waiting, no? So you heard now. You heard Anochi Hashem Elokeh. Okay, but okay, so now you want to know, what does that mean? Does it mean anything? Do I do anything? Has anything changed? Yes, yeah, just have a little patience. It'll take a few thousand years, but you'll work it out. Sure, it makes a big difference. It's unbelievable. It's mamish what it said. Fine. That's the first step. Asher tasim lifnei, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeMoshe, Lo ta'aleh al datcha lomar yashdeh lehem ha'perek v'halacha shnayim or shalosh pamim, ad shteisedura b'fihem k'mishnata, Eni matriach atzmi lavinam ta'amei hadavar o pirosho, lekach ne'amar asher tasim lifneihem, k'shulchan aruch u'muchan le'echol lifnei adam. No Rashi has been more misunderstood than this Rashi. That's the most astounding thing. So people think that the getter of the Shulchan Aruch is that the table is set. That's exactly what Rashi is saying it isn't. The was set, it could only be Sidura. It's chas v'sholem that you should think that you should be teaching them until it's Sidura and everything is clear. But what is the difference between a shulchan that is Sidura and a shulchan that is Aruch HaMucham? The fact that I said down the portion, that's the same I am. Giving each guy a portion. So here's his plate. Now he's ready to eat. Which means the knowledge of all which I all of it is not the shor is by definition not that which lives from the understanding. Because that's what I was when not they should get away with this is bizarre. You need to have a shot on our instead, I already know the mission. I already know. You're telling me, but it's only something on a roof. You have to eat. So what's the big connection? Oh, it's tremendous. Because the greatest Darda Shlomo Melech speaks in Mishnah about how unbelievably idiotic people are. The biggest Darda of the Aslan is Amam Asel Yadam Salah. And he's incapable of being marvelous with you. You got your Shulchan Aruch, you put your hands down in the plate, I'm not supposed to put it in my mouth. I mean, how much do they expect of you? It's a disaster. It's quite amazing. Interesting, you know, for some reason it doesn't have all the text. Right? Now the most amazing thing that this is so not understood. You understand that Rabbi Yosef Karo writes in the Hakdama to the Shulchan Aruch. The Karati Shem Sefer Zeh Shulchan Aruch. Why? Because after all, Bo Yimtzao Ger Kol Minei Matamim Sidurim Uvurim. What do I want them Sidurim for? Yazreni al therefore, B'chein Efros Kapai al Hashem, Yazreni al Dvar Kvod Shema Liot Mimatzdike Arabim Yizakeni Liot Misudar Ke'olchasa. The exact opposite of what a Shulchan Aruch is supposed to be. It's a Shulchan Misudar. It's not a Shulchan Aruch. The Aruch HaShulchan actually does the difference. Okay, and let me actually do it right. And he just set the table, but I'm going to put it before you. So for instance, now it's a Shulchan Aruch, now it's an Aruch HaShulchan. You read through this, you'll be able to be Aruch HaShulchan itself. But you understand what this implies, that the Achila is only in terms of Hirah. I understand everything. So I've been to the Mishnah, I've been to the Gemara, Moshe Rabbeinu was beside of the Taimei HaMishnayos. And that's not to be highlighted from Gemara to Mishnah, like the Gemara Chagiga. So what is left? Not to be Tamana Tzel Yado B'Tzalachat. But the requirement is it has to become part of me. You eat something, you are what you eat. The Torah that you eat becomes you. The idea of being able to be Meira is an absolutely astonishing thing. I ate it. Garsan Avshila Ta'ava. I ground it up. I digested it. It's become part of the way that my mind functions. That's a totally different kind of person. That's somebody who thinks about things in Gemara Bavlik. That's somebody that is basic in the now. I see things differently. This is Rebbe Elazar ben Arach. This is the halacha l'maisa, Maisa Merkava. It's exactly the same thing. Halacha l'maisa of a chicken leg is nogea the entire nature of reality. Nothing is the same. Exactly as the way that child who first understood what a formula could mean, the world is never the same. There's not one thing that he experiences that is experienced outside of that recognition that, oh my God, look at this phenomenon. Wow. You guys don't understand, what are you looking at? What am I looking at? Look at the way this coffee is dissolving in the water. The way the coffee is dissolving. You don't see it. It's amazing. You're actually watching the interrelationship of the molecules of water around it and what is attracting the pieces of the ingredients of the coffee and breaking them off from the crystals and there's bubbling through it. That's crazy. Wow, it's unbelievable. Burst into tears because he's watching the coffee. You understand? This guy's a nut. He's not a nut. He's living every instant of his life in Sholech Malach. Here's the Malach. Shmi b'kirbo. In my cup of coffee, it's also Shmi b'kirbo. But this is literal. A person experiences a different element of the Torah and a different halach. Everything has changed. When the Gemara says, "Halavai that I had those raglayim of barzel," what are you? He's exaggerating. If this is the way you experience this halacha, I can't imagine what you do with the rest of Shas. I got to be there with you. No, is it that why people run to study by this, to study by that? I want to be zeicher to that new way of looking at everything. Understand? It's nageh everything. It's impossible for there to be something that shouldn't be nageh this nekuda. So clearly it goes in both directions. It has to be. And the last piece, of course, of that pasuk is lifneihem. So the nekuda of asher tasim. Understand what sima means. What is the lifneihem? Lifneihem is the lifneihem, well, you know, v'lo lifnei hakom. ואפילו ידעת בדין אחד שלא ימדנינו אותו כדיני ישראל, אל תביאו בערכאות שלהם. המביא דיני ישראל לפני גויים מחלל את השם, מייקר שם עבודה זרה, כי לא קצרנו צרם, and so on and so forth. And if they have the entire Torah, it's only because it's one day? No, obviously not. It's exactly the same. If they take the entire Torah and they decide that they're going to paskin Baba Kama in Harvard Law School. Now the torch course at Harvard consists only of Baba Kama. It makes it Afghan? Absolutely not. Why? This is the Ikriya side of the interrelationship of Re'iyah to Shmiyah. Where are you coming from? Yeah. Exactly. What's your vision of reality? What's the difference? What my vision of reality? I know the din of Shoshana Zapora. Stop drinking a cup. Visions of reality. What's the guy's kind of romantic poet? There's nothing more important than what your vision of reality is to be able to don Shoshana Zapora. You don't know what you're talking about because you have no concept of what might make an Afghanina, of how things are related to everything else. You're telling me, you, the goy, because you learned this, you have some idea what you're talking about? No idea whatsoever. Everything is based on this nekuda. And I pointed out authenticity is based on this nekuda. You tell me what the nafkamina is between a picture that was painted by Rembrandt and a picture that was painted by a student of Rembrandt, right? And for 50 years, this picture that was painted by a student of Rembrandt was believed to be painted by Rembrandt and was auctioned multiple times, went up from $300,000 to $3,400,000. And all of a sudden, some guy discovers with a mass spectroscope, it never occurred to somebody that he's going to take a piece of paint and he's going to put it to, yes, and it turned out that this particular paint was only imported to Italy 30 years after the death of Rembrandt. And therefore, it must have come from his Talmud. And now, all of a sudden, does it make a difference? Yeah, only about $3,300,000 worth of difference. Yeah. But who cares? If everybody thought it was Rembrandt, does it make a difference? Of course it makes a difference. Why? Because it's not this picture that I'm interested in. It's Rembrandt that I'm interested in. I want to have a shaykhs to that re'iyah. I want to have a shaykhs to every other thing that he was shaykh. So tell me, is it the Torah that you want, or is it the Teras Moshe that you want? Is it Zichru Teras Moshe? This is exactly what Moshe says to them. Mimina elilmod. That's what you should have said, Moshe. Tell me that. I don't understand. Well, we're interested in buying a phony Rembrandt? We want the real thing. What makes it the real thing? Maybe the Talmud does a better job of teaching than Moshe. What do I care? It's not the real thing. Where's the vision? Where's the grandeur? Where's the potentiality? Well, I'm going to be limited to some phony? What does he know? He could quote 100 million things that Moshe said. So what? I want the real Torah. How did you not understand this, as Moshe? Idiots. Elipshad is you don't want the real Torah. That's the point. You want the psak. You want a Shulchan Aruch that reads like your Shulchan Aruch. You don't want a Shulchan Aruch that reads like mine. It's exactly the point. Mamish word for word. That's Mamish what Rashi is saying. That's what that whole medrash is. This idea is nogea mamish halacha after halacha. It's not a small issue. So we have the whole din in Hilchos Deis where the Rambam describes what do you do if you're sick in your mind, right? So you go to the Rofei HaNefashos. Who is the Rofei HaNefashos? Talmidei Chacham, the Rofei HaNefashos. Okay, so I got to go to the Rofei HaNefashos. Next halacha. And what will the Rofei HaNefashos tell you? You know, Mishahu, etc., etc., etc. Listen, if you're going to tell me the prescription, what do you tell me I got to go to the doctor for? Just tell me the prescription. You shouldn't have missed. Tell you the prescription. You know nothing about it. It's like you're going to the Goyim. I read in Harvard Law that it says in Torts 101 what it says in the Seches Bava Kama. Yeah, I read in Maimonides, that this is what you're. What does that have to do with reality? That's like posketing a cancer case from the internet. And people do that because they really believe it's exactly like that. Sure. Why Mimina Elimod? When I have to go to school for 14 years to be able to read the internet. You're an idiot, I'm an idiot. So we both read the internet. So what's the difference? This is what's done by the Neitera all over. What? So I need to become this? I didn't become this. Find out. Okay, so I can read the Shulchan Aruch. I can read the latest Piskei Halachos, or I can listen to some shmooze by somebody, and now I know Torah. I mean, it's an unbelievable bizayon. It's a desire of complete and total breakdown. You talk about mishas l'shas. This is a complete end to any kind of belief in a reality of what Torah is. That's good for the point. Because of that, the idea, the Meira Halacha B'fnei Rabbi, that is shaykh to that, is because now I see, Vayechazu es Elokim, so I have to learn from Yanoch about how to see it. That's the point. Obviously, there's a Tochazi, there's a Yerushalmi Tochazi. So Moshe Rabbeinu was Mekayim both. Where was he Mekayim both? He took off his mask so that he could teach you. Well, you have to take off the mask where everybody's terrified of the Karnei Or. Because there has to be the Tochazi and there has to be the Toshma. This is both at the same time. I can't cover my face. This is what Rebbe says. Oh, if I could have seen his face, I would have saw the back of his head. No, that's the Tochazi. You have to see Rav Meir. Rabbi Nurai. Good. So therefore, it's absolutely so what do you want to do? You want to take the shortcut now? So now I don't have to listen, do I? I mean, this is the other extreme of that violation, because the point is what happens to people, and you need to realize how much this has personal implications. Isn't that it's Nogea Ma'aser Bereshis in terms of how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu create a world if there's no capability of instantiation? That this is the whole point. Since there is a Ma'aser Bereshis, it's obvious that there has to be a Yisrod Mishpatim, right? You understand that follows. If there is a reality that's expressive of Hashem de Chochma Yasad Oretz, that means that Chochma is present in the Hineni Shalech L'Fanech Malach. It means that when you're looking at this iPad, you have to be able to go back to Hashem b'Chochma Yasad Haaretz, and that Chochma is a chelek of what is actually enlivening, making everything possible. It's that same Chokhmah. That same ability to be part of that Chokhmah is the Hashgacha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on you, your relationship to that Hashgacha. The ability to be part of an Olam that contains that Hashgacha. It's the ability of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have a kisei of Mishpat, which is the nature of Mochon Kisacha, the mocker of Sholem becomes, that's why ain't Sholem. That's as the Rabbeinu Bachya points out. Doesn't say, it says over here, he uses the pasuk specifically to tell me Baal Shalom, right? Baal is not just there isn't Shalom, but it's Baal. It's Mamash goes Kedeged. I don't know what I get everything. I can just look up the word Rabbeinu Bachya. I suppose, assuming that I actually did copy other things. I guess let's see if it brings up Rabbeinu Bachya. No Rabbeinu Bachya. There's still what happened here. Give me the Rabbeinu Bachya.
There's no shalom.
Apparently, I'm shocked. My mom is shocked. What kind of business is this? What's wrong? Where's Rabbeinu Bachya? Is it over there? I think maybe it's over there because we're going to give it. Next on the. So what happened to this farm we put there? Oh yeah. הבאת את זה כבר לדוד. רבנו בכר הבאת את עצמו. נכון, הוא הביא את רבנו בכר. Yeah, but why isn't it over here?
If we didn't copy it.
But I did. I know that I did. Somehow or other, not all of the things showed up. So why didn't it show? Maybe I brought Rabbeinu with a yud. It is here. Okay. It is here. So he brings the pasuk Gam Eila Lechachamim Haker Panim Bal Tov. This is called Bal Tov. This Bal Tov is the hefek of the Oisius of the Torah. It's Beis and Lamed, right? So it's from Bereshis to the Leineko Yisrael. So Mela doesn't say Bal Tov. It doesn't say Bal Tov. Why? Because Tzedek u'Mishpat Machon Kis'echa. And everything on Mishpat is the Makor of Sholem. And because of this, everything that we do over here is in terms of Layotzev Lavo Ein Shalom. That's the point. Even Talmidei Chachamim, which are the Rav Shalom, are not Shayach to Shalom if it's Yotzei Uba. The personal.
It's also the person, because he brings Gamil Lachachamim. He starts at the beginning of Usicha.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
That was specifically talking.
Yeah, I did. It could be you were like busy. Yeah. So the implications on the personal level are that each person has within himself the existence of this diagram of bris. Because each person has a vision. There's the Vayechezu. And there's a way in which you see yourself and your place in the universe. The question is, where it usually breaks down, is in a Hirah, because you don't have in any way a Shmiya that is consonant with that Riyah. So the person sees himself in such a way, and then the translation of his own Ritzinus and his Taivas and his background and his psychology and his interrelationships are so complex that they don't work at all in terms of the vision that he has. So all that he feels is that there's no connection at all. In sensing that breakdown, you're sensing the breakdown in bris, an internal breakdown in bris, which is more painful and more intimate and more universal than just about any other element of this breakdown. So there's nobody who doesn't suffer that breakdown. So that remarkably, the issues that are brought up over here, the way in which a person is capable of learning Hirah, must in the end affect the way in which he lives with himself, not just the way in which he lives in reality. Now you need to understand the deeper meaning of the Ein Shalom and its relationship to the Yitzhak from Yerushalmi to Bavli. And that's because the Yitzhak from Yerushalmi to Bavli, it says, the Gemara says, Lama Tamelech Chachamim b'Bavli Mitzianim she'enam b'nei Torah. She'enam b'nei Torah means that they are not themselves creations of Torah. They learn Torah, they understand Torah, they can even tell you halachas of Torah, they can give you mussar shmuzim, and they can tell you all kinds of, but they're not b'nei Torah. Mela, they have to make up for it by the creation of a formalism of Torah. This is Bavel. So what's that formalism? They have to dress mitzvah, mitzuyenet, so on and so forth, right? Listen to this astounding Gemara. This is mamish, astounding. Rabbi Yanai, he was walking along. He was very old and he could barely support himself. Right? So he needed Rabbi Smaloi, who was Shameh. He needed Rabbi Smaloi to support him, and he didn't see very well. Rashi says he was already kaved riyah, and plug that in. And what happened was, Asi Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya La'apai. We're not talking about some shmo. We're talking about Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. Right? Not Rabbi Yehuda Anas, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, grandson. Well, Marley, so Reb Smaloi is describing what he sees to Rabbi Yanai. So Reb Smaloi says, if somebody's coming this way, so Bar Inish Deata Lekiblana, Hu Yoi, Vegulta Yoi. He looks like a very chashva person, he's a beautiful person. He's wearing this gorgeous suit. Right? Kimata Legabe. So he brings him up to, here's Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, meets now Rabbi Yanai walking down the street. Rabbi Yanai sticks out his hand. And he goes like this. He fingers the material. He says, wow. Very nice, very nice. Dain shiura kesak. Say, in terms of Kabbalah student, it would be like sackcloth, a piece of garbage. And then it would be arba, you couldn't, less than arba is nothing. This is my, Brooks Brothers suit. This is sack. Fine. This is the first stuff. It's an amazing story with you. This is what you got to do. You got to finger a suit. Piece of garbage. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, okay, Rabbi Yanai zero, get into some learning with them, So boy, minay leben shekayim lebas b'dichseyaim. So okay, Rabbi Yanai answers it. Tichtiv matot makish matei ha'im l'matei ha'am. Ma matei ha'av ben kayim lebas. Av matei ha'im ben kayim lebas. So Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya says to him, Omar lei. If that's the case, then you should also say, right? So Rabbi Yanai says to Reb Smaloi, can we get the hell out of here, please? Just get me away from this idiot. Late Dame Tzavi Lamelach, this guy has no interest in learning anything. Unbelievable. I'm telling you, he doesn't want to learn. I don't want to talk to him. He wants to babble, showing off his cash, this. I don't want to talk to him. What does that mean? You didn't see it. So the deeper point of the element of the Yerushalmi is the trouble that we get into. And that trouble that we get into is the sense that Klal Yisrael got into exactly at this point. At the level of Kaf Aleim Har Chagig. So what happens with Kaf Aleim Har Chagig is why Kaf Aleim Har Chagig? So Tosfos says, and Tosfos in the end quotes the Medrash, right? So his answer comes from the Medrash. He says, didn't they already say Nasav and Ishma? If they already said Nasav and Ishma, so why in the world did they change their mind? So the Lashon, beautiful Lashon. Beautiful Lashon. I can't find it either. This thing doesn't work so good. I'm going to have to talk with my grandson who gave me this eitzah. Again, if I have to go to the Tanchuma, I'll see if I can find Tanchuma. You know what? I may have to go back to the printed word. You know, Moshe, this is a disaster. Oh, yeah, he's right. You got too many Tanchumas, you know? Let's see. Yeah, okay, fine. So Tosfos has this kasha, he quotes this Tanchuma. And the Tanchuma says like this. Im tomar al Torah shebiksav kaf aleim ezahar v'alo misha'ah shamar lemekablim atem et haTorah anu kulam v'amru na'aseh v'nishma. But why is that? Mipnei she'ein ba yigia yitzar. You don't have to work very hard at that. But then the moment amar lem al Torah shebal peh, that was the problem. Sheyesh ba dikduke mitzvahs kales v'chamuras azek hamoves kosher kisho kinasa ein lomed ota lemי שאוהב הקדוש ברוך הוא b'chol libo b'chol nafsho b'chol ma'odo. So immediately you pull out. You pull out because life is too complicated. There's plenty of things that we can do. No? So you're saying, well, it's going to take me forever to get it. Yeah, that's right, it will. But I got no time to sit at a therapist. I'm going to start to try to figure myself out. Well, we'll manage. But you don't manage. You won't manage. So I need to know each protect din and the halachas and mitzvahs, college. Yes. I can't take a shortcut. No. Why not? Because you won't be able to eat. Because there won't be asher tasim lifnei. Because there won't be the relationship of tochazi to toshma. That's why. Because you want to take the easy way out. But this is what we do all the time. It's remarkable how simple it is. It's just, we have this amazing ability to create such a level of chaos and confusion. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. It doesn't work. I can't get anywhere. I can't do anything. And the world is nuts. And, I was doing fine until my wife started acting like a Michigan. Or I was doing fine until I ran into trouble at work. Or I was, whatever it is. So now, forget it. I already wasted the first 3 hours a day. The day's gone. Forget it. I'm not going to do anything today. What? That's right. Now, that's my claw. As a philosopher, that's my claw. If by 11 o'clock I haven't done anything, that's it. Day's over. I'll waste the rest of the day. Unbelievable. I mean, who doesn't know these kind of activities, right? This is the norm. No, I already got a plate for davening. I might as well take off the day a little bit, right? When life as a whole begins to collapse into chaos. So you ask yourself, the first thing you do is you create an impossible situation. So even what you have done until now, you go back on. So now, okay, I'll go back to Mikra. I'll go back to Bavli. Whatever it is. The going back to Bavli loses yourself in a deeper way into intellectualizations. That's the point. He's not one. I don't want to talk to Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. Do you understand? I don't want to talk to him. Please get me out of here. God, he says. Out. Who hasn't met people like this? In terms of your own life. Meet somebody who has no interest in learning. He has interest in talking, in telling you over verta. Zog ma'epis avort. You tell the guy to go to hell if he says zog ma'epis avort. You don't want to talk to such a person. You don't want to hear such a person. What does that mean? Zog ma'epis avort. What is avort? What does it mean? Where is it coming from? What is it connected to? Paninim ala parsha. Paninim. What are paninim, Nikolai? What makes the paninim? Where did they come from? They're nothingness. It's a horrifying thing. Late done Savi Lamelaf. That's all there is to it. He has no interest in learning. It's all the shortcuts. That's all that he wants. To talk about his little shortcuts and his little sparkles and sprinkles. That's all that he wants. And good. So if this is Shayach, obviously not for Fiar Madrega, but this is Shayach for Rabbi Yanai to say about Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. It's not a small issue that we're talking about. It's not something that is limited only to children. It's a problem in an entire approach of living. And it's possible to discern such a thing even in Gedele Shebegedele. Obviously, this is what Rabbi Yada is. That means that the relationship that you can have to get out of the problem of not getting anywhere is to intellectualize it. Talmud Bavli allows you to do that. Mipnei shehu amok. And b'machashachim oshivani kimsei olam. And you don't mind being dead because there's no demands on the dead. And you're still in darkness. And what do you expect? How much am I supposed to understand? It's the Yama Talmud.
It's a kind of escape also.
It's intellectualism is always a profound escape. And it leads remarkably to exactly, that's what, if you're telling me that that's what Kofale and Har Chagigis has to respond to, it's obvious why that's true. Because what I feel is, in the end, either the outside reality that I perceive is actually bris-oriented, and Mamela, the only thing that interests me is learning how it's possible to concretize that reality. The moment that I can say, oh, I can't handle it. What have I said? That it is outside reality. That's what I've said. Correct? That's what I've said. I said, okay, that exists outside of me. And that's the way it's always been. That it exists outside of you. This is what Adam Arishan does. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sitting there talking to him, telling me, here's the woman that's going to make your life. And his face is getting longer and longer, and he's looking like, really, I just can't take it anymore. This is just too much. I just can't take it. How many times have you seen that face on people, the Adam Arishan face, where you're trying to do it? It's an amazing face. I see it in the shir all the time. You're sitting and telling somebody, listen, if you would only take these and you would apply it, everything would be great. And the face is getting longer. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. This is ridiculous. Now I give up. This is what you're telling me. All I learn is that I'm worthless. All I learn is that I can't do anything. It's the Adam Arishan face. I see it all the time. There it is. Right? They've got this new syndrome called, I think they call it the standing bitch face syndrome. It's an amazing thing. So they have now discovered that both men and women both have this standing bitch face, right? You've seen that? No, this is the latest talk. But it's very similar to the Adam Arishan face. If you care about the world, you find out about everything. Isn't that true? It's true, right? The resting, yes, the resting bitch face. There we go. See, somebody knows. He cares. He's also a social worker's got to know. He sees that face all the time. What could he know better? Amazing. I call it, this is the Adam Arishan face. The more you're telling him everything that he could have, all he can see is the face. This becomes the Kviyei Teva, B'nai Kviyei Teva, exactly this Nakuda. And that's why it shows up in this fetch, which is amazing. What a trick.
Also kind level that
Mi yitain vayalav avam zelahem. Hey? Mi yitain. So what is this? No. What do you hold it is? So it's either I'm so happy, which is the atati then, or if lamaisa, the only way that you can look at it, I'm really tired of hearing all of this from you. Leave off a while, after all, Moshe Rabbeinu had the parshas, the psuchos, for a little bit of rest. Leave me alone for a week. So, okay. That's creative and creative. That leads directly, amazingly, to the ego. Why? Because if reality exists outside, and I'm not interested because I believe I'm not capable, whatever it is, I don't want to do the work. That's what it's really about, right? So I always have solutions as to why I don't need to do the work. But what that means is that I have entered into a space that's my space. I'm not interested in dealing with the reality that it's just too much for me. Once you're ready to deal with your own little world, that's all that it takes, is the difference in the methane. How do you respond to the methane? That's all that it takes. Slight little subtle differences in how you're willing to face the facts about yourself and about the world around you. That's all. It's very primal choices. But once you make that primal choice, it's the straight out slippery slope to Bein Bitrei Ha'egel, which is exactly why it's Mishpatim. It's exactly the issue. You're substituting for the Bitrei HaBrit, you're substituting the Bitrei Ha'egel. That's all. Because what do you want to worship and love? The potential, not the reality. That's exactly what the ego is about. It's all about the open eyes, right? That's the ayin gal of the ego. Like the Mishnah is. It's wide-eyed, everything is open. I could have everything. That's right, and you will have nothing. Exactly. You will always be the lovely teenager who will never do anything with his life. Because you're always going to be the golden boy ego. That's exactly the point. And then there's no way out of that. Either you're in love with the reality or you're in love with the potential. It's all about love, and you may not even be able to discern the difference yourself. It feels so real. It feels so passionate. Give a kiss to the ego, my friend. Look, the ego loves you, as the pasuk says. That's exactly the point. And it's only when it's too late and you discover at the end that the Utza was Tamanya no B'tzalaka because he just doesn't have the guts to lift up his fork and put it in his mouth from the shulchan that was Aruch and Musam Lefanam, that then this is why everything fell apart. And the amazing chiddush is that this is because of this concept of Mishpatim. The things that you would have thought were a true withdrawal from reality, a true withdrawal from reality. Why? Because your context is so definitive, right? The world in which you grow up is so definitive. I was telling you before about what it was like in a world where people were excited when they began to discover this amazing sense of how nature is open to them. I described on Shabbos an incredible book called The Discovery of Nature, right? So it's about this guy Humboldt, Alexander Humboldt. Fine. Happens to be Barnea on a Humboldt scholarship or something, fine. But most people don't know who this guy is. And the amazing thing is, at the centennial of his birth, the end of the 1800s, when the population of the world was a fraction of what it is today, right? So you had every city in the world that was worth anything celebrated his birth. In Berlin alone, there were 80,000 people in those times. I mean, imagine what was the population of Berlin in the late 1800s? 80,000 people that made a mishmar the entire night, learning Humboldt's Sfarim, celebrating Humboldt's birth. Darwin has his notes about Humboldt's books. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's no person that has as many cities named after him, as many universities named after him, craters on the moon named after him. 300 species are named after him. Barnea's got, what are you on? Humboldt is, what are you?
Around me, my professor, my colleagues have Humboldt scholarships, which includes that you can arrange a conference in the background so you bring more chachma together. It's all part of it.
Okay. So this was a person who partly lived in complete and total loneliness, right? But he lived in a world that was completely and totally marif, chachma, understood the joy of it. This is a person who was ill, and yet who traveled tens of thousands of miles a year in the 1800s, went to the top of the highest mountains, to the bottom of the deepest mines, trace the interrelationships of life all over the planet, put down the yesodus of the interconnectedness of nature that has become the yesod. That's what it's called, the discovery of nature.